Cooler Screens is suing Walgreens, Chris, for reneging on a contract to roll out its technology to 2,500 stores.
Whoa.
According to the Wall Street Journal, Cooler Screens, the company that embeds sensors and digital screens into cooler doors that are programmed to play targeted ads to shoppers who walk past it, that's a long sentence here, is suing the pharmacy chain, saying that Walgreens obstructed an agreed-upon nationwide rollout of the internet-connected doors and demanded their removal from all stores. Walgreens, meanwhile, says the technology from Cooler Screens just flat out didn't work.
Just flat out didn't work.
Didn't work.
Didn't work.
Chris, this is also the A&M put you on the
Oh,
spot
yeah, we haven't had it
question.
yet, have we?
No.
All right.
A&M wants to know, is this breakup between Walgreens and Cooler Screens a one-off hiccup, or do you see this as indicative of a longer-term concern for digital merchandising screens and bringing retail media in store?
Ooh.
They're going to cut right to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's definitely the latter. I think this is a warning sign. We've had Cooler Screens on the program before. I think we've interviewed them twice.
Yes.
And I remember talking to their CEO, Arson, at the time and saying to him, I have so many operational questions, but I want to keep those at bay because
it's it's
an interesting concept. Yeah. It's an interesting concept. There's a lot here. There's a lot to digest. Because and here's the point. If you read the Wall Street Journal article, there's a lot of he said, she said on who's responsible for managing these screens and who owns what in terms of how the digital content shows up on those screens.
It's like a divorce.
It really is. It's like, you should have done this, you should have done that, blah, blah, blah. But here's the point. Managing these screens, I don't think people really understand this. Managing these screens is basically takes the same effort as running a website. Yeah. When you get right down to it. And in actuality, it's harder because you have to manage a website that is on all the time in a physical store. It has to work every time, all the time. And so then it comes to the question, when it breaks, who's in charge of fixing it? The store teams, the digital teams at headquarters, some third party that you're assigning this? Is Cooler Screens responsible for it? I don't know. But it's a lesson for me, which is why I think A&M's question is right, is if you're an executive and you're thinking about this, you've got to be really careful about the digital media hype because there's a lot to this. You don't want to. I don't think you want to be the first mover on this. You can test it for sure, but your testing period has to be longer because you're going to have to see how these things hold up in store. And more importantly, you're going to have to see how they hold up when your people turn over in their jobs. Right. You're going to need to do them for at least a year because you have to know that your people can scale them. You have the intellectual understanding of how they work, what's required for them to work, to make them work day in and day out. So the human element of here is something that's important. You can't set and forget these things at all. So that's my take. I think it's like running a website, Ann.
Yeah, and I agree, especially when you look at store labor these days. You and I visited one of these in New York when we were there last summer. And do you remember, one of the screens was out and the
stores can't fix them,
and you open the door and there's no more inventory left. There are clearly other things that Walgreens team members need to be focused on doing before getting to this and updating this technology. It's not impacting them at all whatsoever. It's not what they're being benchmarked on. And so I think that let me start by saying I hate when these things don't work because I don't think that it's not a good idea.
Right.
I think that what the problem probably was here is going from 0 stores or from a few pilot stores to 2,500 stores. There has to be more incremental phases so that you can learn, to your point, how this is going to impact the overall store operations, what this means in terms of training, what this means in terms of does Walgreens have their own pricing accurate and up to the minute so that it's reflected in these things? That was another thing that they were talking about wasn't right. That Walgreens price point wasn't tied in effectively to this. And who's measuring and watching all this? Like you said, it's not set it and forget it. So I think, the last thing that I would add, we just talked to somebody about this here today, but I think that while digital media in store, to answer A&M's question, can have a lot of potential financial upside, you have to also be thinking about the other side of this, which is the brands too. The data that's coming in, the brand information that's coming in.
That's something we haven't even talked about
Talking
yet.
about your website and how all the components of that. And the last bit that they complained about what Walgreens did was that, we're not getting correct information from cooler screens. We can't. It's garbage in, garbage
data
out.
that we can't send to our brands.
The data we can't send. Our brands are already strapped.
Yeah.
They can't handle the data that's good that we're sending them. So how are we going to make something of this investment when the brands are the ones that are supposed to be paying for for these screens and for the stuff that's going on the screens? Like, the whole system needs to be realigned before they go out at 2,500 stores.
100%. And going back to the shrink conversation too, if shrink is the way it is in the store, and it's probably potentially less in a cooler, or, well, maybe not a cooler. Cooler might have high shrink in it. A freezer, maybe, yes.
Yeah.
But like a cooler.
Why is it colder to put stuff in your sweatshirt?
Yeah, it's probably harder to steal.
Are you serious?
I would think so. I mean, I'm just guessing.
So was I.
But I think it's probably harder to do, or less desirable to do.
Sure.
You can't just eat that right away. You got to take that home and do something with it.
Thaw that pizza out.
But still, there's the data integrity problem, and so with it being what it is, the chances of this type of thing working is really hard.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to devote the people to figure it out. And so my hunch too is, last point I'll make, my hunch is they had one person at headquarters that was probably in charge of managing the equivalent of a website in store.
It's a bummer.
And if that's the case, executives out there, if that's how you're setting this up, watch out, because that should be your test that it's not going to work. Now, I have no idea if that's true, but I'm guessing it wasn't the amount of people that probably you want to put towards it because it's a new initiative. That's always the way new initiatives work.
Right.